Welcome back to the final segment of the Taiwan Outlook, and I'm your host, Wu Ruiguo. In this final segment, we're going to continue our discussions with Professor Philip Xu of the National Taiwan University. Philip, the last 10 years or so, I think a common topic or very much a focused topic among those of us in the academic community concerns with the rise of China. What would China, after it's risen, due to the regional economy, due to the regional security, even onto the international level. But now, with the relaxation of tensions between China and Taiwan, and further economic integration between the two sides, a new term has been invented, the so-called Chaiwan, C-H-A-I-W-A-N. And we've seen that some countries like Korea, South Korea, that is, they're very nervous about the possible integration of the high-tech industries between the two sides. And also Japan, worrying about the possibility of the two sides of the Taiwan Straits becoming closer. How would you think that after the risen of the Chinese nation, and also now with the relaxation of the cross-strait tensions, how would you think that countries around us, particularly Japan, South Korea, and ASEAN countries, how would they respond to such tremendous changes?
I would kind of surmise that their reactions may vary a little bit between the economic and non-economic realms. On the economic front, I think their concern of a more integrated Taiwan or whatever is perhaps legitimate. But I think that is an inevitable reality or inevitable consequence for their economic status or what they have to face anywhere in the global economy. It's really not unique to the integration of Taiwan and China, but it's happening everywhere. If they are concerned about the integration cross-strait, they could probably be even more concerned about the EU integration. So I think that's a legitimate, but that's a response that they will have to craft some sort of strategy to cope with. So that's on the economic front. In the non-economic front, for example, on the political front, I think there remains a long time to be seen whether or not cross-strait political future would significantly change. For the time being, I guess the majority of the citizens on this island would really prefer status quo. That could be subject to change.
Of course.
But we'll have to see to what direction and how long it takes for these changes to happen. And especially, even though political dialogues or political tension will be further smooth or relaxed, security is really one of the ultimate sort of barriers or difficulties for China and Taiwan to overcome or to deal with. So on that issue, I think there's even less reason for countries like Japan or Korea to be concerned about whether or not this sort of China type of thing would pose a threat to their military security or political interests.
And of course, another very important relationship for us is the relationship with the United States, not only in terms of economics, but also in terms of political and also security issues. And people often say that in the years past, that the relationship, the trilateral relationship between Washington, Beijing, and Taipei used to be a zero-sum game. If the relationship, for example, between U.S. and China improves, that means necessarily the relationship between U.S. and Taiwan will suffer. That's no longer the case, especially in the past years since President Ma Ying-jeou came into office. How would you then assess the Washington perspective on the tremendous progress and improvement in cross-strait relations?
As far as I understand it, Washington, D.C. is much more content than suspicious or disgruntled with the development of cross-strait relations in the past year or so. Then this has to do with the overall diplomatic situation that USA is facing at the global level. Although the problems of the Iraq War seems to be receding gradually, But the resurgent problem in Afghanistan, and also the lingering problem or even aggravated the threat from Iran is still pretty much there, let alone the uncertainty in North Korea. So I would say in the 5 to 10 years, Washington would remain happy and in dire need to see a continuously improved relations between Taiwan and China. So, pretty much as you said, there's no more a zero-sum game in the trilateral relations. On the other hand, I think it is undeniable that there are some sort of minor elements within USA to hold a skeptical view toward improvements of cross-strait relations. But I think that's confined to a very limited group of people in politics, in the academic communities, or in the other spheres. But as I said, to what extent or whether or not the cross relations would have a breakthrough on the political front is still very, very uncertain. So I think there's really no need for these people to be too much worried about that.
Okay. And also earlier that you mentioned that despite the progress in cross-strait relations, the military threat that China poses against Taiwan is still very real. For example, the number of Chinese PLA missiles targeted against Taiwan has actually been increasing and not decreasing in the past year. And that is very disappointing. And that's why Washington has repeatedly stated, even under the new President Barack Obama, that the United States has the obligation under the Taiwan Relations Act to continue to sell Taiwan defensive arms hardware. So, the U.S. arms sales to Taiwan has always been a very sensitive issue in cross-strait relations, also in U.S.-China relations. How would you think that, such an issue, the arms sales, to Taiwan, could destabilize the trilateral relationship? And what's the likelihood of such a scenario happening?
The adverse impact of U.S. arms sales to Taiwan in the trilateral relations, I think, can be detected. However, we have to understand that the adverse impact really stems from, in the first place, China's military threat. So the source of all the problems still lie within China. It's not a problem for Taiwan per se. But I think as long as the U.S. continues their arms sales to Taiwan, protests and unhappiness on the part of China would also continue. But I do not think that's going to be a decisive factor to really jeopardize the improvements of cross-strait relations or even to U.S.-China relations. As a matter of fact, if one sees all the improvements without any potential risks or sources of uncertainty in key relations like a trilateral relation like that, that would be an exception in diplomatic history at a global level. So I think it's a natural phenomenon that there would be some uncertainties there. As long as it's not fatal, it's not decisive, it's actually probably a positive thing to sort of maintain a balance at the overall level.
And another sensitive area is what you mentioned earlier, Taiwan's international space. You also mentioned that this year was historic in the sense that after 38 years of absence, that we're able, for the first time, to participate in a United Nations affiliated activity at the World Health Assembly. And many people believe that as long as the cross-strait relations continue to move in a positive direction, with a positive momentum behind it, that there are bound to be more cases where Taiwan can attain a similar type of status or participate, in the words of former U.S. Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice, meaningful international activities. So, do you think that, as in your view, that there could be, between Beijing and Taipei, there could be a, agreed upon formula, for Taiwan to participate, on international, stage at different organizations, including United Nations affiliated organizations, as well as the NGOs, the non-governmental organizations?
I think you use a very interesting term, formula. I would say if there's going to be a formula, it'll be probably one of a de facto formula, not necessarily a formalized or de jure formula. Because if there is ever a set of principles or formula being developed down the road, it's going to be on a trial and error and mutually testing basis. It's going to be a long-term sort of enterprise. But as far as we can see now, it seems that some of the fundamental principles may remain valid in the future. For example, the first one is the avoidance of any statehood premise organization allowing for Taiwan's participation. At least in the next few years, I think that would be probably too sensitive for Beijing to accept. And the other is, I guess, perhaps more in the realm of functional organizations, such as economics, public health, humanitarian relief, so on and so forth. So I guess these are the two minimum principles that would make up the foundation for a future formula. But as I said, the most important issue is really to what extent, throughout the interactive process, greater mutual trust could be established to really allow for expanded realm or scope of this formula. That really hinges on the wisdom of not only the leaders of the two sides, but also the ordinary citizens across the Taiwan Strait.
And 10 seconds, Professor Xu, what's your perspective on cross-strait relations in the next 10, in the next 5 years? Say.
5 years. I think it will continually ease up in terms of on the political front. And it will certainly witness greater steps being taken on the economic front. So overall speaking, we hope that it's going to be a contributor rather than an undermining factor for the general welfare of people in this society.
Good. I want to thank Professor Philip Shi of the National Taiwan University to be our special guest on the Taiwan Outlook today. And in the future, we'll certainly look for another opportunity of having Philip back on the program. Thank you, Philip.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Yes. Well, thank you for watching. I'll see you next time on Taiwan Outlook on the Macroview Television. Thank you.